1, public comments. All written public comments that are received prior to 4 p.m. the day before the library board meeting will be compiled and will be added as supplemental material for the library trustees and the public to review prior to the meeting. To make public comment during the meeting, the public must call 775-783-6024 and leave a voice message which will be played for the library board of trustees and the public. Any written public comment received after 4 p.m. the day before the library board meeting will be compiled and added as supplemental materials to the county's website and distributed to the library board of trustees within 24 hours after the meeting. So public comment is open at 10:02.
This is Veronica Hallam. We received 5 public comment emails before 4 o'clock yesterday. I submitted those as supplemental material. We have not received any public comment as of yet this morning.
Thank you, Veronica.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Veronica, it's 10:06. Have we received any public comment?
We have not received any public comment.
Okay, then public comment is closed at this time. The agenda item number 2 is the election of the chairperson and vice chairperson of the Library Board of Trustees for 2021. Heather, are you going to be able to stay on for this? You're muted.
Okay. I'm going to have to jump off here in about 5 minutes. and then rejoin you in about 15. So if it's possible to reorder that so it could come later, that would be much appreciated.
And Cynthia, is that okay to do it that way?
Sorry about that. Cynthia Gregory from the Douglas County DA's office. Yes, it's within your discretion to take items in any order that you feel best serves the meeting. Yes, that's fine.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and move that till Heather can rejoin the meeting so she can participate in that portion of it. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 3 for possible action. Discussion on approval of the proposed agenda. The Library Board of Trustees reserves the right to take items out of order, to combine 2 or more agenda items for consideration, and to remove items from the agenda at any time. All items designated for possible action shall include discussion by the Library Board of Trustees, and they may take action to approve, modify, deny, take no action, or continue the item.
Excuse me, I move approval of the agenda.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda, with the item number 2 being moved down to a later time. All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. For possible action, item number 4, discussion on the approval of the minutes of the December 8th, 2020 and the December 15th, 2020 meetings. Okay, the December 8th meeting.
I vote to approve the minutes of the December 8th meeting. Jill Harper.
I'll second. Bonnie.
We have a motion and a second to approve the December 8th, 2020 meeting minutes. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The minutes from the December 15th meeting.
I move to approve the December 15th meeting. Jill Harper.
Excuse me, I have one addendum that I would, or clarification I would like to put into those minutes. We were talking about staff and trying to find exactly where this is. Okay, I'm going to backtrack on that for the moment.
This is Bonnie. Do you need a second?
Like, she was going to make a amendment to them, I think.
That's what I thought.
I had a clarification, but it's not significant, and I'll let it pass.
Okay, and the only one I had was under item number 14th. It's like the 3rd or 4th sentence. It says, when he attended the board meeting in August, he said they agreed with the library board's diversity statement, and it should be reinforced for her that there was too much misinformation.
Where is that, Kate?
It's on the page 8
Okay.
under item 14. I think it's like the 3rd or 4th sentence where it starts, when he attended the board meeting.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay.
And did you get that, Veronica?
Yes, I got that.
Okay. So I'll make a motion. We approve it with the amendment. Cynthia, did you want something?
No, Cynthia Gregory from the DA's office. I believe there was already a motion to approve, so I just wanted to make sure that that motion included the amendments. But it sounds like you've made that motion, so I think we're good to move forward.
I second it. Jill Harper.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the amendment. All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Agenda item number 5, the consent calendar. Items appearing on the consent calendar, items that can be approved with one motion unless pulled by a trustee wishing to have an item or items further discussed. When items are pulled for discussion, they will be automatically placed on the next item for discussion or may be continued to another meeting.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Can I just ask a question, Amy? What are binge boxes?
Thanks for asking. This is Amy Dodson. The binge boxes are from one of our vendors, and it's a package of DVDs that share something in common, like for binge watching, only they check out as one item rather than several separate DVDs. So you might have a binge box of Steven Spielberg movies or Meryl Streep movies or some sort of binge watching theme.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Bonnie, you were making a motion to approve it?
Yes.
I second it. Jill Harper.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, item 6 for possible action, discussion and review of budget performance report summary and the gift fund summary.
If anyone has any questions, let me know. But just briefly, we're still a little bit under budget, which is awesome, of course, at this time of year, because we're about halfway through the fiscal year. Well, at the end of December, it was exactly halfway through the fiscal year. And so in all of our categories, we're slightly under where we should be, which is always a good thing, especially right now. But if you have any particular questions about the budget reports, please ask.
Okay, hearing no questions, I'll make a motion that we approve this gift fund summary.
I'll second it.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Agenda item number 6, or no, that was that one, sorry. Agenda item number 7 for possible action, discussion and possible action on the fiscal year 2021 adjusted opening fund balance. Discussion and possible action providing direction to the library director on distribution of funds. Douglas County CFO Terry Willoughby will provide additional information about potential actions the board may take regarding the adjusting opening fund balance.
So I'd like to welcome the county CFO, Terry Willoughby, who's in on the call today. And I'm going to let her speak first. But the reason I asked her to be here is she and I had a recent conversation about the adjusted opening fund balance. And some of the information I had was completely wrong. And so Terry's going to explain that. And then that might change some of the decisions that we made last month about what to do with those funds. So gonna hand it over to Terry.
Heat up.
Thank you, Terry Willoughby, for the record, County CFO, and thank you, Amy. I want to give you a little background on what fund balance really is. It's like the savings account, and the library is now in its own fund. We've separated it from room tax this fiscal year. So it's a standalone fund. It has its own funding source. The two funding sources for the library primarily are the PAL sales tax and a transfer from the revenue from the general fund. So that's what supports the library. Fund balance is like your personal savings account. So you wouldn't want to spend all of your savings account, and we want that library fund to have a cushion because two revenue sources are relatively volatile, and we don't really know what the economy is going to do right now. So we don't want to spend or augment or add budget for operating expenses from that fund balance. It's just like you wouldn't pay your electric bill from your savings account or your mortgage payment from your savings account. Operating expenses should be driven from operating revenue. So I know some of the items that were approved. One was a capital project, which was really kind of a mix of building improvements. And that's an appropriate use of fund balance, but you could also, the better plan would be to develop a plan of what capital projects that you would like the library to take on, and then, spread them out, do it like a 5-year plan, and then save up that fund balance for those plans, or develop, we're going to use 10% of our fund balance this year and spend it on capital projects, and what capital projects fit into those parameters, rather than just a lump sum of here's some building improvements and without knowing the scope of that. I think it's a better idea to be more specific on those capital projects. And we are expecting some additional operating revenues. That would be an appropriate place. If your operating revenues are up, then you would be able to augment your operating expenses from those. So that's kind of an overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I know I was looking at some of the augment requests. I know there was one for China Spring to purchase new materials, and that is a one-time and unusual expense. So that would be an appropriate use of fund balance because it's not going to happen every year. Some of the other library materials that are just to augment the budget would be appropriate use of when you have greater than anticipated revenues from the current year. Does that make sense? I can happy to answer any questions.
Harry, this is Bonnie. May I ask a question? So library materials, is that an appropriate use of the fund balance? Because it's a recurring. If we got more money, that would be okay to use in there.
Correct. Right? Typical, regular, ongoing operating materials would not be an appropriate use of fund balance. However, included in the request was a special one-time expenditure for China Spring for the youth camp.
Right.
It doesn't happen every year. So that's a one-time thing. It's just like if you were going to do a one-time expense, you would take that out of your savings account. That's an appropriate use of fund balance, but not regular operating library materials.
So the $90,000 would not be appropriate.
I believe part of that is for China Spring. So I would suggest that Amy segregate that component out of the 90,000 and request an augment from fund balance for that. And then determine what the most important capital project is rather than just doing an augment for building improvements, which is pretty nebulous. We ask that directors really nail down those capital improvements so we can track them. We also have to account for those and add them to the county's assets. So we have to know what's budgeted and we track them in capital project accounts.
And I'll just jump in and say, when we talked about this at a previous meeting, I had said that we had to spend it before the end of the fiscal year, and it turns out that's wrong. And so we don't have to spend it by the end of the fiscal year. And I was going off of information from when I was initially trained by the previous director, and things have changed since then. So I apologize for that misinformation, but Terry and I got that all straightened out.
And I'm Terry Willoughby for the record. It is a little different because we've separated the library into their own fund. So the money's not going anywhere. It's going to continue to grow in her own fund, and it's not going to go anywhere. It'll stay in that fund.
So the Bookmobile operation shouldn't be included in that either then?
No, that should be from revenue.
Yeah, that's an operating expense.
So we're looking for, so to, in a sentence, what I can say is things that are appropriate for are one-time or special things, like a special capital project you want them to do. Or the China Spring, we're going to spend some money this year to improve China Spring Library, particularly in light of COVID. So that's a one-time special thing. Regular operating expenses should not be augmented from fund balance.
Okay, then Amy, can you clarify the computers and network?
Yeah, that's just to add money to operating. So we can cross that off. We had decided at the last meeting about portable computer lab, and we can discuss that again today. But on the list, which is part of your packet, what was approved at the last meeting, we can use it for small equipment or furniture, circulating technology, because that's a one-time thing, and the portable computer lab. Everything else, we have to wait for our operating revenue to come in. Isn't that right, Terry?
Right. Well, you did have the building improvements on there, but
Yes.
I think at the time, as I recall, you didn't have a specific project, and I'd rather see projects outlined for the use of those funds rather than just general improvements. I know shelving was one. I'd like to see quotes for shelving, and maybe bring that one back later.
Okay.
Quotes for whatever project, and then you would have a specific dollar amount.
Okay. That all sounds great. The only thing I'll call out from that is the roof over the book drop. I'd like to still investigate that possibility. It doesn't necessarily have to be done immediately, but we're having issues with snow and ice freezing the locks on the book drop, so we're not able to open them when there's ice and snow. So having that covered up would be a huge improvement.
So Terry Willoughby for the record again, if you had could work with building services and get a quote for that, you have a specific to the penny, but a general idea of how much it's going to cost, then that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Again, I don't think you have that information today.
No, I don't, but thank you.
Amy, what is the circulating technology?
That would be like Kindles or other e-readers that people can check out to use ebooks. We haven't done that because Overdrive our old service, RB Digital, was not compatible with Kindles and e-readers very well. But now that we have a better platform, we would like to try circulating some Kindles. That's all it is. We have iPads that we circulate. So we have circulated similar things, but not Kindles before.
What is the demand for that now?
Well, our ebook usage is way, way up. So that's one indicating factor. We do occasionally get requests, but it's hard when we're doing curbside service, it's hard to figure out demand. We go by our statistics, like how much ebooks are being used, how many times people ask us if we have Kindles, and things like that. But it's difficult to determine demand right now. But they're not very expensive, so I think it's worth trying. But of course, that's up to the board to decide.
How much are the iPads used?
The iPads were used a lot. It's slowed down now because they're older iPads. But initially, when we first started, they were checked out very regularly. It was hard to get one. So I'm anticipating that the Kindles will do well also.
How many would $1,000 buy?
Probably 7 or 8.
That seems like a worthwhile endeavor to me.
So my understanding, we have to go through this and designate what we're going to say yes is going to be on this list, and that's what you'll submit to the county, Amy?
Yes.
Okay. So under the Minden building improvements, we can't put anything right now because we don't have quotes?
I think that's right.
Okay. And is that something that it only can happen at this time during the year, or some, in June, we could say, okay, we've gotten the quotes, this is what we want to do, or is there a specific time you have to request them?
Terry will be for the record. It could become part of the regular, if you didn't now, it could just become part of the regular budget process because you can use your beginning fund balance in the regular annual budget process.
I'll just note that our next agenda item, item number 8 about book lockers, that's something that we could definitely use the adjusted opening fund balance or part of it for that. And so we might want to hold off on some of these decisions anyway until we've discussed that, or you all can decide what we are going to use it for, and then just vocalize or state that we might be using some of that funds in the next agenda item. I hope that makes sense.
And what's the proposed dollar amount for the China Spring enhancements?
$2,000.
And the Tahoe Juvenile Detention doesn't need any additions to their collection?
I'll have to check.
Okay.
They don't usually make requests. China Spring does. They'll tell us, what the kids are requesting, or we go out there every month to see what's worn out and needs to be replaced and things like that. We don't go as often to the Juvenile Detention Center. And I don't think that collection is used as much as it is at China Spring, honestly.
Well, I think there's a lot fewer people at the State Line Detention Center. I know sometimes there are 0.
Right.
Because my colleague has, before COVID, was doing church services for them. And, some months they didn't need her at all because there was nobody in the facility, and other times they had a handful. So I think that's a factor in the difference in demand.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
And is that something, Amy, we could just say maybe put $500 towards that in case there is a need?
You could, or we could wait and see what comes in terms of additional revenue and then decide. Since it's a small expense, I think either one is acceptable.
Okay. Okay, then can I suggest we look at the book lockers before we make a decision on where these funds are going to be spent?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll come back to item number 7 and move on to 8.
Okay.
Okay, agenda item number 8 for possible action, discussion and possible action on the proposed purchase of remote book locker or lockers to provide better service and more options for the public to pick up library materials on hold. Discussion may include potential locations for the book lockers.
Thank you, Kate. In your packet, there's one quote from DTech, which is the vendor that Carson City Library used, and they were very quick to give us a quotation, and this afternoon they're doing a demo of their product for us online. However, Julia Brown and I have seen it in action, and we were very impressed with it. One good thing about DTech is that it's compatible with our integrated library system, and so there wouldn't be any technical obstacles other than getting power and internet to the actual book lockers. But other than that, it's sort of a plug and play. Once it's all up and functioning, it'll be very easy to move forward with. I did request quotes of 2 other companies. One of them is still in production and they won't have any available until the summer. And then the other has not responded to my request yet. So this is the only quote I have at the moment, but I will get at least one other. The book lockers that we're talking about are very similar to an Amazon locker. It's like a smart parcel locker. There's a touch screen in the middle and a scanner for a library card. So the patron just has to scan their library card and then their locker pops open and they get their materials and they're ready to go. So it's accessible depending on where you put it, 24 hours a day. It's very, very simple to use. And it provides some services that we're not able to provide right now, such as up at the lake, just because we're low on money and we're low on staff. So this would really help expand our services and satisfy more customers. And it also would help people who don't use the library during operating hours, maybe people who work 3rd shift or what have you, and can't get to the library before it closes. You could pick up your books at midnight, and I think that would be a really great service. The initial quote that you have in front of you is about $31,000, which is the same that Carson City paid for theirs. The picture that you see on your quote would be a wrap, a graphic wrap on it, such as what we did for the Bookmobile. Otherwise, they come in just plain white. So they don't look like that until you have the graphics on them. But anyway, so I was really impressed with the product. I look forward to seeing the other quotes. But I think this would be a really excellent thing to add to our libraries.
Bonnie, Amy, so we're committing to a 5-year contract if we do this, if we buy them.
No, those are maintenance fees annually for the software license and sort of like an extended warranty. So I guess you could call it a contract, but it just means that we'll keep the license for the software that runs it. We'll have maintenance for at least 5 years, and that's it. So it's not like we're beholden to something, but as with any equipment, it runs on a system. And so we wouldn't really be able to change that to something else unless we did a major overhaul.
And do you know, Amy, up at the lake, what would it be involved in getting internet and the electricity to the location for it?
That would be no problem because we have our existing internet and electric up there. I've talked to Larry Wilson, our IT coordinator, and he said putting one in at the lake would not be difficult at all. Everything there is upgraded and very current. It's running better than it ever has in terms of internet speed and things like that. So putting one up there would be fairly simple. Down in the valley, we have a couple different locations that we could try, and we can get to that when we talk about locations. But either way, it's not that difficult to put them in, other than the possibility of getting some electrical work done.
I have 2 questions. If we decide to go with it, how soon could it be installed and operational?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I don't know. I can find out. I know that Carson City made it happen pretty quickly because they use CARES Act money for theirs. So I'm guessing a couple of months, but I'll find out more this afternoon when we have our demo.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering about the influence of weather on its operation.
That's a great question. They call it, this particular model, they call it weather resistant, not weatherproof. It's better if you have a little bit of a shelter over it. The one at Carson City is under just a short overhang, from the roof. But you can also put them indoors. Up at the Lake Library, we have a couple options. We could put it outside and find a space that's sheltered enough, or we could put it in the lobby, which is open more than the library is. And we could figure out a way to have it accessible when we're not there, by putting it in the lobby. Down here, there's a couple different places we could put it in the valley. I met with Scott Morgan yesterday from Community Services, and he offered to have one at the community center / senior center. And we scoped out a couple of places indoors and outdoors. So there's a potential of putting one there, or we could put one here at the library. And there's pros and cons to both of those.
I have a question. What has Carson City's experience been in terms of having these lockers and having increased patronage or usage?
Question. They've only had theirs operational for 2 weeks. So
Oh, okay. I didn't realize
Yeah.
it was 7%.
No, it's okay. Yeah, when we went to see them, they were training their staff on how to use it and getting ready to make it live for everyone else. So I think it's only been in operation about 2 weeks, and I'll have to ask them. But in terms of how well it worked and how well it worked with their system, it was really great. It was very impressive.
Are there any other, is there any other data on this type of equipment in other libraries around the country that might give us some kind of benchmark as to what we could expect in terms of usage? You know, is it accessed frequently outside of operating hours? You know, does it seem to increase patronage? How many of the lockers are, you know, are they always all full? Are they 10% full? I mean, is there any kind of best practices or reporting in from, you know, from other libraries outside of our immediate vicinity?
I will definitely look into that for you. I know that Elko Libraries just got one as well. They did not use CARES Act funding. They used, I think, gift fund funding. But anyhow, they have just installed theirs, and the director there has told me they're really happy with it. It's a different brand than what Carson City went with, but she sent me all of their information as well. And it seems like it's very popular there, but I don't have hard statistics on that.
Okay. Just, you know, it seems like a cool thing and something that could be of value. It'd just be interesting to know, to have a little bit more data on what happens once you put it in, and,
Right.
you know, what does it mean to patronage? What does it mean to usage, and so on. But, so that would be great. We're
Okay.
not, yeah.
Okay. I'm sure there are more questions, but one thing I'll say is, if we had one at a remote location like the community center or Kale or something like that, the only little speed bump is that we would have to travel to go fill it and empty it as needed every day. And so it might do better being at the libraries rather than somewhere far away. I know that, however, accessibility is really important, and I think Gardnerville would really appreciate having one there. But there are just lots of factors to consider. If we put it at the community center, for instance, we would be using their internet and their electricity, which they're happy to share with us, but they're maintained separately from ours. And so if there were an outage, for instance, in the county, it would be dependent upon county IT to get that back up and running, not the device, but just the internet connectivity. The advantage to doing them on our property is that we would have immediate service if anything went wrong, because we have an IT person and we also have an IT contractor, all available on the spot. So the one advantage to having them at the libraries is that they'll be easier and quicker to maintain, and easier and quicker to fill as well. If someone were to call, put something on hold, and it's, you know, 5 minutes to closing time, you know, we would be able to put it in the locker for them right then, and then they can come and get it. If we had it at a remote location, it would be probably a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. So it is a little bit quicker if we were to do it on site. Another advantage to doing them on site is that everybody knows where we are already. And so, you know, it's a familiar place for them.
Well,
But-
Kale already has the book drop for returning books.
right,
So there's already some library connection at Kale.
right.
Well, and if we get the Bookmobile back on the road, to me, there's no need to have it at the senior center because the Bookmobile stops there anyway.
Right.
So that would be duplicating the service.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So I agree with that statement. And I think that we already have 4 return boxes around the county. And then these would be an additional return. People could also return their materials to the lockers. So that's just another return option. We wouldn't really need it if it's at the libraries, but just wanted to throw that in there.
I think there are some pluses of the quick turnaround that could happen if it's located at the library.
I agree.
I think if it's located at the library, it would, you know, people, as you say, know it. And so they would become accustomed to it, and also would bring them to the library. There are a lot of people, I know it's surprising, that don't know where the library is.
I know that surprises me
So
too.
when I tell them, they say, oh, I didn't know it was there. And, so
Yeah.
but I want to, if we would approve this, we have to understand we're committing ourselves to $2,500 a year coming out of next year's budget.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do that for 5 years or more.
Right.
That's kind of and $2,500 doesn't sound a lot of money until you get to this year's budget.
Right.
It
That's
would be
true.
a significant amount of money.
That's true. We do have lots of software licensing, and it's trending toward these subscriptions where you pay for annual licensing. That didn't used to be the case 10 or 20 years ago. But we do have lots of software licenses that we have to maintain. So that's a fair point.
I think it's a good idea, but I think we just have to understand the full cost.
Right. Well, the board could set a limit on, since I haven't gotten another quote yet, you could vote to approve if that's how you're inclined, with a maximum amount, you know, so that if any quotes came in over that amount, we could immediately reject them or ask for a lower quote. That's just a suggestion. You don't have to do it that way. But the 2 libraries in Nevada that I've talked to, their cost was right around 30,000 also. So I think that that's a fair amount. It operates almost like a branch or a library dispenser. And so I think it's going to be used for a long, long time beyond COVID and everything else. So my recommendation is that we get 1 for each library to increase services and availability for patrons.
And one other question, Amy, if we get them and we have it at the library and we decide we don't want it there, can it be moved to a different location, or would that?
As far as
Not
I
be
know, it
possible.
could be. Yes. According to the people I've talked to and the other library directors, yes, we could move it. It would just involve a little additional, you know, electrical and internet wiring, but yes, we can move it.
Okay.
It just needs internet and electricity. So.
Well, Bonnie, again, I added up the total cost. It's $31,935. So you'd have to at least set aside $32,000. That doesn't include tax. So I don't know what tax is
Right.
on it. So
But
what
We're
would be-
government, we shouldn't pay tax, right?
I don't.
Are
it
we
just-
government?
I think Cynthia just said yes, but she's muted.
Okay. Yeah. And we could save $750 if we don't want the fancy painting cover.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. The $750 would be for them to give us a particular color or graphics. We can get it done locally cheaper than that. And so we don't have to necessarily go with them. Carson City is using a local vendor to get it wrapped, and they said it was much, much cheaper. So I would probably look into that. But yeah, we have other options about appearance.
I do think the graphic adds a a lot from kind of a marketing PR standpoint,
Mhm.
you know, rather than just making it look like a postal, you know, a gray postal
Right.
parcel locker. You know, it makes it more inviting and more something that you would want to check out. Hey, what's that? What are those? You know, and maybe ask, you know, get more information on. So that's my 2 cents on that. And especially if you could save, you know, cut the price in half, or, you know, save. It's a one-time expense, you know, and so again, my 2 cents.
Okay.
I think it'd be very, very popular. I really do. That people are always saying, well, what are the library's hours? When can I get there? When? And they wouldn't have to worry about that anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about how limited the pickup hours are at the lake right now. And if we
Mhm.
could get books in there 5 days a week instead of 2 days a week for people to pick up at the lake, especially, that could have a big impact.
Absolutely.
I agree. I do think that this would be a really good use of those opening fund balance funds. I'm right in line with Terry Willoughby that we should be saving some for capital projects, and I'm really glad that we can set some aside for the future. But I do think this is something that is really necessary at this point, and it would be a good use of those funds. If we approve 2, you know, roughly $62,000 ish. I don't think that's too much to take away from those funds.
Say that again, Amy.
Okay. If you were to approve 2 book lockers, it would be roughly $62,000. And I think that would be a really good use of the adjusted opening fund balance funds that Terry was discussing. I'm really glad that we can save some of that money for the future, but for now, I think this is something very relevant and would be a good use of those funds.
This Bonnie again. I'm sorry, because I thought we were getting 2 for 30, close to 32,000. So
No.
this is only a quote for 1.
Right.
Well, as I look at this quote, so the 10,995 includes the reader and 9 lockers.
Right.
And then the first line of 8,495 is an additional 8 lockers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second 8,495 is an additional 15 lockers.
Right.
So we might not need, you know, we might just go with the first 2 modules at the lake,
Right.
and maybe more modules in the valley, depending on what we think demand is. How many did Carson City put in?
They did all 3, the first 3 lines, right. The 9, the 8, and the additional 15.
Yeah, so that's over 30.
Right. And that's an excellent point. We might do well with something smaller at the lake, and then we could eliminate one of those lines.
Yeah, maybe do the 9 plus the 8 at the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Gives us 17, and then go for a larger one.
Right.
Down in the valley.
And I think it would be good if Miss Willoughby is okay with this, that you could set a maximum so that when we get the other 2 quotes, we don't have to schedule special meetings for each one. So you could put a cap on what you're willing to spend on these items. And then if we did get a lower quote, then great, we're underneath that maximum. But if all the other quotes came in too high, then we might be able to save a little time there.
Well, what if we did the first one, 10,000 at the amended, and the 8 lockers at the lake to start with?
Well, the first line on the quote also includes the touch screen, the barcode reader, the receipt printer, all the technology that runs it.
Yeah,
so all of them have to have that first line
Have
there.
to have that. So you have to have both. So if we did the first 2 of the first one.
Uh-huh. We could do that up at the lake. That would save $8,500.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because I don't know, and
So-
I know, I think it might build use, you might want to add on to it later, but I think
Right.
to start with purchasing more is probably not the wisest way to go, to see how it's going to be used.
Mhm.
Okay,
And if we're installing them at the library locations, we don't necessarily need the integrated return bin because there's going to be a return bin a few feet away.
that's true. We'll still need that second line though, because of the RFID technology. So what Bonnie was suggesting with the first two for the lake and then the first three for Minden would work really well.
Yeah, I agree, Bonnie.
Yeah, whatever you all think. But those first two lines are not really something we can eliminate from either one.
So I move that we approve up to $55,000 for this project to include installations both at the lake and in the valley.
I'll second that.
Terry Willoughby for the record, just a reminder for Amy and everyone, this is just a budget. So the actual purchases will need to come back and following the county's purchasing policy.
Yes.
Right, I'll have to go to IRC and follow those normal procedures. But
Quotes.
yeah, get the quotes. And hopefully I'll get 2 more quotes, but I know I'll get at least 1 more. And so, yes, I'll have to go get that approved because of the amount. But I'll be able to tell IRC that the library board has approved whatever you're about to vote on.
And it sounds like it's over 50,000, so it'd need board of county commissioner approval.
Right, yes, thank you. So
Is
this is
that-
basically the first step. If you all approve it, this is the first step and then I can move forward.
Does that amount seem like a good amount to you, Amy?
I think so. I will talk to the vendor today and talk about that third line, the 15 lockers, and make sure that we have our prices correct according to their quote. So yeah, I think 55,000 is sufficient, but you can make it a different amount if you like.
I was just asking.
Okay.
I would like to see after, whenever we get what the final cost, I would like to see a listing of everything we're purchasing with this and what all of the cost is, because I am concerned that there are going to be additional costs that we don't want to be surprised with later.
Okay.
Didn't do it yet. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the $55,000, which is the first step in the process to take it to IRC and the Board of County Commissioners. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carried. Then we'll go back to agenda item number 7
Mhm.
for the other items that we need to put into the. Sorry.
The request for the adjusted opening funds.
Yes. Okay, so the notes that I have, we can keep the $10,000 for small furniture and equipment.
Yes, we can.
Okay, and the $1,000 for circulating technology, the $2,000 for library materials for China Spring, and then $10,000 for the portable computer lab.
Mhm.
Anything else that I missed there?
Where is
Nope.
your support? So 10,000.
And you can change those right now. If you decide you want to wait on the portable computer lab, that's fine. As Terry said, we can set it aside and then revisit it later.
I recommend we set the computer aside, and because I think we need more information, because right now we don't have any plan for use other than we
Right.
might possibly take them, but that's mine. I don't know that we know what we really want to do with them yet.
Okay.
And do we need the full 12,000 for small equipment and furniture? Because I see option 2 had a different amount.
Yes. And I mean, I think 10,000 is plenty. We might even spend less than that. But but again, that's your decision.
So then that would be $13,000 and then the $55,000 for the lockers, correct?
Let's see, 10. Where'd you get 13?
20.
Well,
Oh, there it is. Sorry. Yes.
Are we keeping the portable computer lab?
Bonnie suggested we set it aside, but no one else has said yes or no on that one.
Well, I say that to Jill or Elizabeth, because I think to spend that money, we need to have a plan, really, how it's going to be used. And we don't have that now.
Good point, Bonnie.
Would be using the computer, portable computer lab while the library is closed?
No,
I mean,
no,
yeah, I
this would
think
be
so,
for when
Bonnie,
we
that's a
reopen.
good idea. That's a good idea, Bonnie.
Mhm.
Just postpone it.
Okay, so we need, before we approve it, we need to know what the cost of the roof overhang is going to be.
Right, so we're gonna wait on that until I can get more information.
So
Oh, we're not-
I move that we approve 10,000 for small equipment and furniture, 1,000 for circulating technology, and 2,000 for China Springs materials.
Okay, I think we just lost Kate. Cynthia, did you want to say something?
We did.
You're muted.
So my question is that would include the 55,000 as well for the book lockers?
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed this. Mine froze, kicked me out of the meeting, and I just came back in. Bonnie was talking when I got
Oh.
disconnected.
So
Well,
I moved that in addition to the book lockers,
There
we
we go.
approved 10,000 for small equipment and furniture, 1,000 for the circulating technology, and 2,000 for China Springs.
Okay, that's what I thought we were at.
I'll second.
Okay. So the
Okay, we have a motion and a,
Oh, sorry. So the motion is for 13,000 plus 55,000 for the book lockers, so 68,000.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then you'll get us the quotes, Amy? Once you
Yeah, in
get those?
addition to the one that you have, yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's everything on 7 and 8, correct?
Yes.
Or Cynthia?
So Cynthia Gregory from the DA's office. So just for clarification, on that remaining amount of the opening fund balance, Terry, does that need to be designated or
No,
are we
it will
good?
just roll into the fund,
Okay, thank
Because-
you.
the new fund balance next year. So
Okay, so then we will go back to agenda item number 2 for possible action. Election of the chairperson and vice chairperson of the Library Board of Trustees for 2021.
And Terry, if you don't want to stay, you can leave the meeting at this point, but thank you very, very, very much for your information. It was really helpful.
Yes,
No
thank you,
problem.
Terry.
thank you, anytime.
Thank you. Sorry, Kate,
That's fine.
move forward. So now we are going back to
Agenda item 2.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, then if nobody else is going to, I'll nominate Bonnie Rogers as the chairperson.
I nominate Kate as the chairperson for a second time.
And I'm going to decline that nomination.
I am willing to do it for this year for them.
I'd have to have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion. Is that how it is, Cynthia? Is it called a motion or just a nomination?
She's sung.
Sorry about that. Cynthia Gregory. Yes, a motion is fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second for Bonnie to be the chairperson for the 2021 year. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that carries. And for vice chair? Well, I will nominate Heather.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Heather to be the vice chair for 2021. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Heather, you accept that?
I accept the vice chair, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 9 for possible action. Oh, Bonnie, do you want to take over?
Oh, I'll let you go through the rest of the meeting.
Okay, agenda item number 9 for possible action. Discussion and possible approval or approval with modifications of revisions to update the library policies listed below. Policy revisions are needed to accurately reflect current technology, facilities, and professional practices. The following policies may be discussed. First one is the computer and internet use policy.
This is one that we discussed at the last meeting, and I have implemented the changes that the board wanted to see. And so this is our third reading of this policy that incorporates all of the suggested changes.
I move approval of the computer and internet use policy.
I'll
I
second that. We have a motion and a second to accept the computer internet use policy. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Second one is the library user suggestions and grievance policy revised at the 12/15 meeting.
And this one was also revised. So this is the final version that incorporated all of your changes.
I move that we approve the library user suggestion and grievances policy.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this policy. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Materials collection in detention facilities, update the policies.
Okay, so this is the first reading, the first suggested changes. And I made some pretty significant changes to the policy for China Spring and the detention center at Lake Tahoe. There was a lot of unnecessary steps that I suggested we eliminate. And basically, the way it operates now is we work with the staff at China Spring, usually the director, Wendy Garrison, to decide what materials are appropriate. And on a somewhat annual basis, we'll sit down and talk about any changes she wants to make as to what's appropriate for the kids to read there. There are so many restrictions, I can't even list them all at the moment, but there are lots of types of materials that the kids are not supposed to have. But having said that, those things change all the time as the publishing industry changes and as more and different books become available. So the original policy had listed all of those materials that were appropriate or inappropriate, but the list was 11 years out of date. It changes so frequently that it's just not realistic to list all of the new changes every year or every 6 months. And so the way it's operating now is actually the easiest and most realistic way. And that is that I work with the director, and our youth services librarian works with them as well, to decide what's appropriate. The kids who are there make their own requests for books that they would like to have, and those are always cleared by the staff of China Spring first. So we have a pretty good system in place. And so I just wanted to simplify that policy because it was really, really out of date. And then there's a form that you'll see in this policy that says request for reconsideration of materials for China Spring. It's just not realistic for them to fill out a form every time they find a book that they may or may not want the kids to have. It's a lot easier just to communicate with them. And we do a really good job of staying within their restrictive parameters. So I think that it was just far too long and complicated of a policy.
So are you saying remove the form?
Yeah, I don't think we need the form anymore.
Okay.
I did.
Okay, and then one correction. Oh, yes, that's what I was going to point out.
Yeah, there's a couple typos, sorry.
Librarian is spelled wrong.
No.
Yeah, and then at the top of the page that's numbered 4, there's a P instead of an S in the abbreviation.
Yeah, China Pring, sorry. I'll fix those.
And
I'd like
in
to,
the blue writing, both China Spring and the Tahoe one, librarian is spelled incorrectly.
yeah.
Well, I was not having a good day that day, I guess. Can't even spell my own title.
Instead of saying wishes to have materials, if a staff member recommends to have a material, I think wishes it needs to be stronger than wishes.
Okay. I
So
can change that to recommends.
Yeah, recommends having, removing materials from a collection. There needs to be, but why would you take away the form? Why not just make it simpler? At least you have a written record of it.
Well, as I said, it changes so often. We don't really need a written record of it. As I said, the library staff is out there once a month. We have regular communications with them. Rarely have they asked us to remove anything. And I just think it's an unnecessary step. Once they give us their parameters or update their parameters, we follow them immediately. So it really hardly ever happens, but it just seems like an unnecessary step.
And where were you talking about recommends or whatever, Bonnie? What?
Oh, on the last page.
Last page on page 4, the last paragraph.
And it's the same on page 7.
Yeah.
So I can change them both.
Okay. So this one you'll bring back at the February meeting?
Well, it depends. If the only thing is to change wishes to recommends, we can you can introduce a motion that would just recognize that change. If everything else is okay the way it is.
If you correct the spelling.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But correcting spelling doesn't require a motion.
No.
So it's up to you. If you want me to bring it back, I'm happy to do that. But if there's only one word of change, we don't have to.
I recommend approval of the policy with the change of wording and correction of spelling.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend this policy with the correction and then approve it. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. D, policy on exhibits and displays, update policy language for clarification and to describe current practices.
I did not change a lot on this. We've had this policy in place for a long time. And, you know, we have exhibit cases at both libraries that are, when we're open, are changed every month. Sometimes there's a long waiting list to use our display cases. So we do use this policy a lot. And it definitely needed some updating. However, most of my changes were about bulletin boards and facilities. I think that the way we're handling the display cases are fine. And I don't think we really need to change any of that. And then there's a section on the bottom of page 1 about campaign materials. We definitely pull that out every time there's an election year. There's a lot of demand to have the campaign materials in the library when that's relevant. But the policy is working and I don't think we need to change it. As I said, the only changes I put in were on page 2 about bulletin boards and facilities. I will say sometimes we have people sticking things on bulletin boards without talking to us, and we'll discover, you know, puppies for sale on the bulletin board or something.
There is another typo.
Oh,
On page 1, instead of removing the lowercase L and replacing it with an uppercase L, you remove the I and replaced it with an L.
Yeah, I saw that.
where's this?
First paragraph.
Have it circled.
The only blue letter in the first paragraph.
Oh,
You left the I out.
Details.
sorry. Thank you.
I have a question, and this is because I noticed you changed it to a capital L here, but throughout these policies, you have a small L and a capital L, and it needs to be consistent. So we need, because really libraries should not be capitalized, but we need to be consistent in what we're doing with it.
Thank you.
You're right, because under bulletin boards, it's a similar use of the word library and it's not capitalized. So
Right.
if we were using German, it would be capitalized.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know me, I'm a stickler for grammar.
Any changes on that other than the typos?
No, I didn't have any.
Move to approve?
Second?
That was Heather seconded?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. A motion and a second to approve this one with the corrections of the typos. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that one carried. E is the policy on gifts, update policy language for clarification.
Okay. Again, I didn't change a whole lot, but this policy was very, very out of date. It was last approved in 2008. So I didn't change a lot. I really just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. There was a public comment about the donations being tax deductible. And so I confirmed that. I also talked to a couple people in the county about it. And even though we are a government library, so to speak, the donations are still considered tax deductible by the IRS. We can't tell the patron that's donating what to do with their taxes or make any recommendations. We can just provide the information. We do give a receipt when there's book donations and people want a receipt for tax purposes, but it explicitly states that we do not determine the value of the donation or what they do with their taxes. We just say, yes, you donated books on this date, and we list how many books, and that's it. So we're not making any IRS type of claims or trying to offer tax advice whatsoever. But as defined by the IRS, those donations are tax deductible. When people donate money, we send them a letter of acknowledgement and thanks. So those are our procedures for donations.
So Bonnie, we've got some capitalization issues here too.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I know it. I think you just need to go through all of them, and
Yeah. And I don't think county should be capitalized.
county shouldn't be
No.
capitalized.
And then we had two places for library that I see.
Yeah,
Now, Friends of the Library, that's a title of an organization, so that
Yes.
stays
Mhm.
capital.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, I see a
Count to
third. Yeah, there's a bunch of libraries.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, I wanted to ask a question about the next to last paragraph. And Cynthia, this may be, because what you said, you're saying it can be used for all of these reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have a sentence that domain monies to the gift fund may be used as determined by the library or something. Or do you want to spell it out?
That paragraph is directly from the NRS
Okay,
as to what gift funds can be used for legally. So
that's okay then.
I would hesitate to change anything, but if you wanted to add something, I'm sure Cynthia could give us good advice on that.
No, I don't want to add anything, but I just wondered, but if it's in the NRS, leave it in then.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, I move approval of the policy on gifts.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the gift policy. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carries. And the last one, registration of borrower's policy, update policy language for clarification.
I made a couple of small changes that line up with our current procedures. This was another policy that was a little bit old and needed some updating. We try to make it as easy as possible for people to get a library card and use their library card. I changed the word picture to photo because I think that's more recognizable. And I added the word legal for legal guardian because a lot of kids will come in with a family member, but they're not the legal guardian. And we have to make that distinction because parents are responsible for what children have checked out on their cards. So we can't necessarily have their uncle sign for it unless he's the legal guardian. So that's something that needed to be pointed out. I also proposed changing at the very bottom of page 2 where it says, patrons may be prevented from checking out items when a patron's account has significant negative activity, such as, but not limited to, the third bullet point, I changed to $20. I think $10 is too low. I want people to have access to materials more easily. And I think $10 is less than what we would charge for a lost book. So I don't want people to not be able to check out if, you know, they have one damaged item that they've already paid for, or, you know, something to that effect. So I think that we should raise that limit to $20. Other than that, we don't need a whole lot of changes on this one.
My question, Amy, was on the replacement cards.
Mm-hmm.
Replacement cards are for a $1 fee, and then patrons may request a card for $1. It seemed repetitive.
It does. And are you talking about like the third paragraph on page 1?
No, it's on the back right above where you were talking about the $20.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Replacement cards, we do charge $1. But we can also have them request a replacement just because they like the new cards better than the old cards.
Okay.
Or their old card is wearing out, that kind of thing. You know, they put it through the wash and now it's mangled, so they want a new one. That kind of thing. So that's what the $1 is for.
Is there any way to combine that? It just seems like you're saying the same thing twice.
We could,
but-
yeah.
You could just say replacement cards can be issued for a $1 fee, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. We can do that.
Then up under 4 at the top of that page, could we just say a current telephone number with a United States area code?
Yeah, we could. Sure.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
On page 1 of that, let me find it again. Okay. On the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, under this sixth paragraph down, where it says children under 16, the
Mhm.
last sentence, person or entity with the approval of the library director or the library supervisor. Now, we now have 3 library supervisors. So should you just say a library supervisor?
Yeah, I can do that.
And then it's on the last sentence on page 2, or and at the discretion of the library director or
Yeah, you're right. Or,
a library supervisor.
yes, that's great. Thank you.
And back to that, under 16, we probably should have legal in front of guardian the second time.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you.
Well, it should be the minor child, because for their minor child, you only have one parent and one guardian. So,
Well, today, they and their is used as a singular.
That's true.
I know.
Kind of irritates me too, but
No, it's not correct though.
we don't have an alternative word.
No, so if we just made it the.
Yeah.
Because
Anything else on that one?
And do we need this one to come back, or do we just want to approve it with the recommended changes?
Either one is fine, whatever you all prefer.
well, I'm going to approve it with I make a motion to approve with the recommended changes.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this policy with the changes recommended today. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that one carried also.
Thank you. I will bring back new policies at the next meeting.
Okay, and I think here's a good time to take a break possibly. Is everyone good with a
Yeah.
5-minute break?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So back at 11:30?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's 11:30, but we'll wait for Jill to hop back on. Okay, looks like everyone's back, so we'll reconvene at 11:31. Agenda item number 10 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding in-person library services, hours of operation, and closures in response to the COVID pandemic.
Okay, and Bonnie, I'll start this. I've had emails and personal comments to me why the library can't reopen because to meet the governor's standards of a 25% of occupancy. And I'm bringing this to you because there is discussion in the community about the library having some browsing hours again. And I'm also, I love to read the newspaper. So I read the Appeal and the Courier. But what really struck me is the Carson City Library is hosting the first Bionics camp in February. And they got a federal grant to do it. But what strikes me about that, the Carson City Library has consistently through the past year done things that keep them active in the community's awareness. I mean, doing things they did with the 3D printer, they did the shields, and they've done several things during this year that keeps them in the community, saying we're doing something for the community. They did a Google workshop for businesses, but I think that Bionics Lab for students, they did the girls who code. And so I think we need to start doing something that says to the public, we are active and we're here and we're doing things that will benefit the public. And particularly the Bionics Lab and the coding, those are for young people that will prepare them for school and other things. So that's just my concern that we're not, I guess I'll say positively visible in the community.
Well, I would like to say, I hope that that is isolated because I get lots of positive feedback about our online programs and all of the things that we have to offer, despite the fact that we're closed for browsing. We have a higher usage of our curbside service than Carson City, but this is not a Carson City contest. But I do know that our curbside is much busier. I am aware of 3 complaints about not being open for browsing. If we did open for browsing, it would have to be on a limited basis, you know, only a certain number of people in the building at a time and so on. But this is up for discussion, of course.
Well, I'm bringing it to you because I hear it what I hear from the public is just, I want to tell the board that at least people are talking out there.
Well, they're also going on record. You've got 3 letters, but at the same time, there was recently in the last 5 or 6 days, a posting in a community site that serves, you know, the Gardnerville, Minden area. They call themselves Rants and Raves, and people talk about politics a lot, but they also talk about, you know, all kinds of things that go on in the community, from, you know, what's going on with traffic circles and so on and so forth. Anyway, a comment did come up from a member of the group who, you know, spoke about feeling like, gee, you know, we've just got to get back to these browsing hours. So that kind of ignited kind of a little mini firestorm where there were 41 likes, and in terms of people going on to respond, there were 55 comments along those lines. And people are aware that there's curbside pickup, but some of the comments were, you know, I'm just not sure, you know, maybe it's better just to buy a Kindle and get your own books and work it into your budget. So I think like 41 likes on a comment like that is more than 3 letters. So it does give some idea of, you know, the fact that this is not just a couple of people who, you know, have a very specific agenda. I personally feel that we should strongly consider opening for browsing. And I know in our supplemental material, we have a couple of letters. And I think the points that the letter writers made are, to me, well taken in the sense that, yes, curbside's great. And it's great that people are using it. And that's been a very good response to, you know, in a difficult time. And I understand that, you know, you're thinking, wow, this is something that will very likely carry forward because, you know, it's additional service to our patrons. And I think that's great. It does not, however, having a library on catalog online does not replicate the experience of going into a library and being able to go to a general section, you know, whether it be fiction, nonfiction, how to, you name it, and, you know, browsing. And, you know, I just feel strongly about that. And I feel that you are doing a great job of being, I'm speaking to you, Amy, that you've done a great job of, you know, being very aware of risks and extra protocol that needs to be put in place. A lot has been put in place, but I believe that we are at a stage now. I just poked around and I did a little research on my own. And I looked at something, we have something in the community called, here, let me just pull this up, called a COVID-19 Mitigation and Management Task Force. And they had meeting notes, but the highlight of the meeting was that while we still continue to see cases certainly happening in our counties, the state biostatistician stated, that I'm quoting, based on previous post-holiday trends, it is likely that we have seen the full impact of Christmas gatherings in our case trends and test positivity. The impact of New Year's will continue to be present through the end of January. The state is observing a much smaller holiday impact than was anticipated, and it is unlikely there will be additional significant increases caused by the holidays. So I think we, you know, took an abundance of caution to anticipating that wave that came after Thanksgiving and what was expected to be, you know, a bigger wave and incidence of cases through the Christmas and New Year's. But this is our state biostatistician. He said, okay, you know, it's still out there. We still have to be cautious. We have to wear a mask. And then, you know, already anticipating, you know, one thing that we all hear on the news, well, we have these new variants, right? So they could be coming at us, you know, who knows when, and we know they're in LA and they've popped up here and there. So the latest advice, there was a little report yesterday in the Huffington Post quoting Dr. Fauci, who said that now would be the time for employees who are in contact with the public to start double masking, and that is a good proactive way to limit fallout from possible variants showing up. And they recommended going with the KN95 mask as well as a surgical mask. So if we were to open up for browsing, we could use some of our budget to provide these KN95 masks, which are available on Amazon, and depending the quantity that you buy, they cost anywhere from $1.50 to $2 a piece. So they're one step below the N95 that our medical professionals would wear, but they have a very, very high degree of protection. The governor does allow us and has allowed us to have 25% occupancy. And I think we should, I honestly think we should. I think it is time, and we've gone through these waves. We still need to take precautions. We don't open it up. It isn't like back the way it was, but with staff protected, you've got your cleaning routines down, with setting limits on people coming in and figuring out your, staff rotations in terms of, what would make sense in terms of hours. I defer to you on that, or, would like to hear your thoughts. But I do think it is time to revisit that decision. And I would argue for opening up to some browsing. So that's kind of where I stand.
Anyone else?
Well, I agree with, we need to do some browsing. And I think with everything that's in place with the curbside services, all the online services, I don't think the influx into the library would be a huge amount of people. But for those people who, and I look at it, when I was a kid, the library was just this wonderful place that I got a happy feeling in my heart when I went in there. And I think people should be able to have that still and keep the precautions that you need to keep everybody safe. But I agree that we do need to start some sort of browsing again. And I know the one comment was to have appointments for it. I know you said that that's not a manageable way to do it, but just something so that the people who want to use it do have that opportunity to get in. And I know one of the concerns is that people touch everything when they're in the library. Can we require them to wear rubber gloves so that when they come in, they wear the gloves? If they touch things, it's the glove touching it, then they dispose of them when they leave.
I don't think we can require gloves without a mandate, from the county or the state. So I require the staff to wear gloves if they're handling any part of the collection, whether it was just returned or not. But we can't ask the public to do that.
We could put maybe a box of gloves and just suggest they might, if they want to use them, couldn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, this is an aerosol spread virus. It's not, I think,
Yeah.
Is there any literature that says that people touching books briefly spread, the virus? I don't think there is. And if there
Very
were,
limited.
yeah, very limited.
Well,
And yeah,
From
Sorry.
the studies I've read.
yeah.
the studies in the library profession have shown different lengths of time that the virus lives on various surfaces, whether it's a book or a DVD or a leather bound book or what have you. And I can provide that to you, but I've spoken about it before at other meetings. And they continue to do new testing every 2 months to see if the latest mutation of the virus is living the same amount of time on surfaces. The thing that's most notable is that if you have one book all by itself, just sitting there on a table, the virus will only live 1 or 2 days. But if you have books that are stacked or on shelves together or in return bins together, then the life of that virus is much, much longer. And what we have to remember is that we don't have books just sitting there by themselves. That doesn't happen very often. And so like when we clean out the book drop, or we gather donations from returns from one of the return bins, all of those books have been living together and they continue to do so while we quarantine them. I don't know anything about contact tracing, but I do know that there have been multiple studies to show how long the virus lives on various library materials.
Yeah, I read.
Go ahead.
I read some of the studies at the library professionals website. I forget what it was called. And it makes sense. I mean, I teach microbiology, so I do know a little bit about viruses. It makes sense that they're going to last longer where the books are next to each other because they're prevented from dehydration as quickly. And the dehydration, because it's an enveloped virus, it has essentially what's equivalent to a cell membrane on the outside of the protein capsule that is sensitive to what the environment is like. So I thought that study was interesting and it did make sense to me.
Yeah. Well, before we go too far into it, the way we handle the library materials is really an operational thing that I've put in place. And the board doesn't really need to worry about it. Of course, we can always discuss it, but it's an operational thing that doesn't really affect services other than we explain to the patrons that we do quarantine the books for a few days when they're first returned. So I think that if we want to stay on topic, we should focus on buildings being open and what that's going to entail.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, Amy, what are the other libraries in Nevada doing, especially in Northern Nevada?
The 2 closest libraries are doing curbside only. That would be Washoe County and Carson City. Most all of the libraries are doing curbside only, I think with 1 or 2 exceptions in other counties. But overwhelmingly, libraries are doing curbside only or some form of pickup service. I know Washoe County Library was closed for a long time and did not accept any returns until recently. And so they're just now starting to get all of their materials back. So that's what other libraries are doing. And I will add that, of course, I've talked to the staff about this quite a bit. And the staff feels that it's safer to stay closed a little bit longer. And that's what I feel as well. And as a side note, the vaccines will not be available for quite a while for our staff because we're not considered essential frontline workers, even though we do work directly with the public. And so it could be months before we all get vaccinated. That's just a little side note.
So the staff feels they would be safer to stay closed for a while. As you said, a little while longer. What does a little while longer mean? And part 2 of my question is, of course, it would be safer. It's safer if you stay home and never go anywhere, which is what I do. But, that doesn't always work. So would the staff refuse to come in and have browsing hours?
No.
Or
no, they will do what we ask them to, or what I ask them to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody would refuse to come in. I think they would just be a lot more scared. And it's more than just touching things. Libraries are very different from other businesses. And I know in the complaints that I've received, people have said, well, if the casinos are open, how come you're not open? Or if the grocery store is open, how come you're not open? You know, and that kind of comparison. And we're fairly unique because there's so many things in here that people can touch and sneeze on and spit on and whatever they do. It kind of seems like it's kind of concentrated into the building. But having said that, the staff will do what I ask them to do, but I think they're going to be extra cautious and probably a little scared.
I think we should not rush to let patrons back in the library. And I mean, at WNC, where I'm a professor, it's been all year up to the professors whether they want to have direct contact with students or not. And I personally do choose to do that, partly because I teach lab classes and our library is open for students. But I'm also sensitive to the fact that at least I have a choice of whether I'm exposing myself to other people or not. And not everyone has that choice. And I take this situation very seriously. This morning before the meeting, I did look at the current Quad County data. And while we're doing a lot better than we were in the first half of December, we're still at much higher than we were in August. And the thing that's scary to me when I looked at that and I pulled it up again is that for the Quad County area, 40% of all the cases that have existed in the Quad County area are active today. That scares me.
Amy, have you moved forward with putting up any sort of window browsing with those bookshelves in front of the front doors?
Well, we're working on it. No, it's not there yet. We're trying to find the right way to do it because those benches are in front of those windows. We have to set up something that's above the benches. And so we're looking at bookshelves that we could put on a table maybe so that they would be above the benches. The first few bookshelves I looked at were far too heavy to get up on a table, but we're looking to see what we have available and whether or not we have to purchase something. But the plans are in place and we are going to do it. We just haven't found the right equipment.
Because I think that would go towards browsing because people get to actually just look at books that they don't know what they're looking for. They see, you know, oh, I like the cover of that book. That's what don't judge a book by its cover, but I know I even do that when I'm picking out books.
Right, right.
That's what I think. I mean, when we had bookstores, I used to browse bookstores and find things I never even thought I wanted to read and had a great time. And that's the one thing I miss because I can't do that on Amazon and all of that. But I tried the library catalog and I finally just quit because I wasn't sure was looking at a whole bunch of things. So, but I think there's a need to say to the public, we are here to serve you in different ways. I understand the curbside and it works and some people like it, but there's a whole group of the community that does not. And they may not write letters or they may not do anything, but they will look at us and say, what are you doing? I think some of the county officials are saying what's happening over there because if everybody's working from home or they're not there or what's going on. And we understand that, but the public does not. And I think that we have to do something. Either you have to make a statement some way, Amy, saying we're meeting these guidelines and we're doing it as close as we can. And then when the governor, if he comes out this week or next and says, you will be able to do more, we start trying to fit that in. But rather than just saying nothing.
Well, we have a guideline right now that says that we can be open. So that is a guideline. I mean,
well, the guideline says 25% of occupancy.
25%, exactly.
Yeah.
At 25%, we can allow My dog is barking. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
your dog. I thought, I don't
It's-
have a dog.
I've got 4 of them here and they've been precious and quiet, but somebody must be walking by the house. So she's letting out a bark and letting us know. I'm
Well, and
sorry
it's a
about that.
maximum, sorry, it's a maximum of 25%. What's to say we couldn't just do 10%?
Exactly,
Just-
exactly.
Or
I
say
don't think-
20 people, that's it. Or
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be a deluge of people coming in, but I think to those who do come in, it'll be very, very significant. We do have this homeschooling community, which is always a part of our community, but even more so now that some parents have chosen to keep their children at home, during this time. And the library becomes, more important to them. I just think it will create a lot of goodwill and a lot of good word of mouth PR to make an effort to accommodate something, especially since it does not, it is allowed by the governor. So we can set our limits. We can set 20 people at any one time. We have masks for them when they come in if they're not wearing their own. We provide, as I said, the extra quality masks, a higher quality mask for our staff to double mask. And it is a different kind of contact. I understand the idea that, and I have looked at data as well, and there's some very good data from a couple of groups out of NYU that I looked at, about virus on materials. But it's different if I'm a virus carrier and I'm holding a book and I've held that book for however long while I've read it. That's had a good long time to get all over everything and get messy versus me using the tip of my finger, pulling it out and putting it back in. The chance of that exposure as a browser versus someone who logs out and touches and holds and has, that in your home and brings it back in. That I know you've got operations for. Yeah.
The pages aren't going to keep the virus as long as the plastic covers are. That
Correct.
smoother surface is more
Correct.
conducive
Yep.
to virus hanging around.
That's true. That's true.
Uh,
But neither are our staff going to be going and touching all those books, right? So as long as they're not going to have to touch everything that one who may be a virus carrier might have touched. It's kind of like an angel dancing on the head of the pin when you get into some of these, discussions about like the virus and inanimate objects. We just know the biggest, I think what we know is that the biggest risk is through, the aerosol delivery and it's unlike for our staff, it's unlike say a teacher being in a room or a lab or, in a classroom setting in person with 20 or 30 students, gathered right there. The staff, and for an hour, for 2 hours, the staff is not following them or, patrons around as they're browsing. They're always going to probably have, except for that one moment of interaction when they're checking out. And we do have self-checkout. Is that correct, Amy? Is that still? Yeah. So that could be, encouraged. And yes, it does require, would require some extra, cleaning and so forth. But I just think we should do something. And if you say I need to wait a little bit longer, then let's set again, I would argue, I don't think we do, but if we should say, well, when, you know, what is going to be the you know, the finish line that we have to cross over to be able to say, okay, we'll open it up to 20 people at a time, or we'll open it up to 10%, or whatever the metric is going to be.
Yeah.
You know, what is a little while? Let's wait a little while longer, because we've had 2 months here, and we've gotten through, as I said, you know, the worst of those holiday you know, holiday increases, and you know, maybe you want to be safe and wait a couple weeks more, and you know,
Well,
work. But I'm just think we need something.
okay. Well, if I can jump in for a moment, yes, we could set a date. We could also set some other benchmark like positivity rate or something like that, as a goal or as a signal for when it's safer to reopen. We do a lot of sanitizing. I'll tell you that when we did have browsing, we have little bins around the library that ask people to put whatever they touched into the bin. You know, if they picked up a book and looked at it and read part of it and then decided not to get it, we don't want them to put it back on the shelf. And so that's somewhat effective. Not everyone reads signs, that's for sure. But we do have those bins in place. We are sanitizing, obviously, all the time. And the staff has been quarantining and sanitizing the books. So none of those things are a problem. We're really talking about human risk and risk factors to the staff. And I think it would be great if we could get higher quality masks. It would be even greater if we could get a vaccine, but I don't see that happening. When I checked this morning with a couple of different people and a website, it could be May or April at the earliest before the library staff gets vaccinated, simply because we're not front line and most of us are not at risk. And so we don't fall into those groups. Meanwhile, we will continue to come up with innovative ways to serve the public, whether we're closed or not. And I just think that we need to set some kind of benchmark so that we can decide exactly at what point are we going to reopen.
Well, so why not reopen at a very small number now? I mean, yes,
We could, yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Well, yeah, I'm just offering up options. You know, if the board wants to set a date, you know, whether that's tomorrow or February or whatever, they can do that. Or you can set a benchmark for when, you know, certain statistics are met in this whole group of statistics about positivity and how quickly it's spreading. Those are just suggestions.
Elizabeth's wanting to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have two things. One, I want to point out that people who are satisfied with the current service aren't likely to write letters.
No.
Or post on community online bulletin boards because they're happy. And I mean, unless you're overjoyed with something, you usually don't comment on it. And secondly, I think it makes more sense to pick some kind of a benchmark in terms of the number of cases or the percent of vaccines in the county or something like that, as opposed to saying, well, we're just going to do it in 2 weeks. Because maybe in 2 weeks, suddenly the cases are going way up. And, you know, I mean, the vaccine rollout feels really slow to me. I'm tier 2 and I can't get an appointment. And they, you know, from week to week, the Quad Counties doesn't know how many vaccines they're going to get. In theory, they're getting 3,000 a week, but it doesn't always happen. And so it's just going slowly. And so it's hard to predict, I guess.
I did get one. I think I don't know when the governor's next press conference is going to be. He usually does them, I think, on a Tuesday or Thursday, doesn't he? And so if he comes out and says that certain business or certain things can be open at a level, I think that's a point. And he said, when did it come in January? It went to February 15th, didn't it?
I believe
But
so.
he gives us, he says directions to that. And at that point, he says if more, then we start thinking seriously about how we're going to serve the people personally. We can do it and do it, I think, safely. And I am very, very careful. And so but I go to grocery stores, I go out to things I have to do, but I'm very careful. And they're very careful to be sure that they are meeting the guidelines. And I think that's what we have to do instead of saying, no, this is all we're going to do because our group of people happy with it and too bad about the rest of you. Because we want the community to support the library and support the staff and the people. So I think that's how we have to look at it now.
Okay. I would just caution against being too reactionary. I know it's upsetting to receive an email or a call or what have you that's negative and pushy and even aggressive. I'm accustomed to it because I've been doing this for a long time. But I don't think we want to be 100% reactionary and say, well, we've had, 30 people unhappy or 100 people unhappy and decide to make a decision just based on that. Because this is an issue of science. This is an issue of a virus that we cannot control. And I think that we need to be using that as our sort of guiding light through all of this, is to react to the virus and transmission and people's behaviors a lot more than people who are just unhappy, because some people just complain to complain.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate that. But also, I think there are enough people. It takes a lot for people to do things. It really does. And when people start reaching out and talking in other ways, that's not negativity. I don't think. They're asking questions because they have a concern. And some may be pusher and others, but that's okay with me too. But you have to listen to them, because to dismiss them, I don't think is effective for us in the long run.
Oh yeah, I don't want to dismiss anything. I just don't know if we should make decisions based on it.
I would like to, I'd like to go on record saying that my feeling is not, I do not believe that I am being reactive. I'm listening to what the community says, but I'm giving you my honest opinion about how I feel. I am one of those people who find, browsing an online catalog, when I feel like reading something, but I don't have a particular author in mind, to be, not, not to have a lot of utility. So, and I do personally follow science, and as I think I mentioned earlier, looked at a lot of reports, right? The county report and so forth. So I'm not just in presenting this, I want to be clear that I'm not just pulling it out of my hip pocket as a reactive measure because I don't enjoy the library being criticized. I don't enjoy having criticized. I want everyone to love us. Of course I do, but that's not where I'm coming from. I'm really part of that group that would like to be able to pop in, spend 20 minutes, be surprised, pick something up, that I wasn't expecting, and get out. And, so I just want to have that on record.
Well, I think the bench is a really good idea, and I think maybe it would be helpful to talk to libraries and say, as far as positivity rates, when it gets, do you think that would be a good point, so that we're all in the same state, and our libraries are all trying to work together, and we're kind of, our vaccines come in to our state. I think it would be find out more information about that, and then maybe do some kind of a article to the newspaper and saying this is what we're doing, or come up with things where they can look through the window or whatever. But something where we're consistent with the state and we're not just reacting, and that we're, doing the safest thing and the best thing for the public. So maybe, like I said, look into that, and then maybe do some release, just saying this is what we're doing, and these are some things we're going to do so that people have more access.
Well, I think we should do a press release regardless of whether we open up browsing or we don't.
Well, right, but I have statistics and information behind it, not just this is what we're doing. I want some facts behind it so people will know why we're making those decisions.
Yeah, and you can have those, you can have those going either with for or against. There are facts for both. So.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to say one more thing. We just approved spending $55,000 for a system that will keep people out of the library.
Well, it's not really keeping people out. It's giving them additional options.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't go in the library.
But they can get their books at any time. The library is never going to be open 24/7.
I know that. But if we say we have the money to do that, then why can't we? And I'm not reacting to negative. I like hearing from the community, and I like hearing from people around, regardless, negative, positive, or whatever it is. But we need to do something that's positive to the community.
I think we're already doing positive things for the community.
Well, I do too, in a limited status, but there's a whole group of people we're not. Or they wouldn't write these things, and they wouldn't send emails and things. It takes a lot for people to make public statements. And I understand Jill's, things in that, but I think if we listen to what the governor says, and if he says again that you can have a limited occupancy, and because his is all based on those statistics, then we should take it from there, maybe.
Well, I still think we should be consistent with the other libraries and understand that what their point of view is too. We're not the only library in the state. So I just think that, having that contact with them and talking with them, and maybe coming up with better things that we can do for the public.
Yeah, because last week when I checked, Lyon County was the only one that's it's been open. They do the curbside, but their branch is open, the ones that they have. I have no idea what their thoughts are behind that, but that's what I discovered when I was looking through it. And one other thing, Amy, I know the next agenda item is the Bookmobile. If we can get that service out into the community, I think that alleviates some of the browsing hour need, because people can go to the Bookmobile and get the items that they need.
Potentially, yes. I would agree. I'll just reiterate that I think if we set some kind of concrete benchmark or statistic, I think the community would be more understanding, and we would be saying, yes, on this date, we're going to reopen, or at this point in vaccinations, we're going to, some sort of concrete fact. Because some of the people that have complained have asked about so many different factors that it's hard to even answer those questions. When I give them the information and they keep coming with questions and questions and questions, and it's difficult to answer all of those questions without saying, hey, we have this concrete plan here that at such point, whatever that point is, we're going to reopen for, limited browsing or full browsing or whatever it is the board decides. I think that's better than just saying, well, we're going to do more research, or we're going to decide later. I think it would be really good if if the board could set some kind of goal like that or benchmark so that we could say to the community, yes, we've heard you and here's what we're going to do.
Amy, I mean, we don't have, the expertise to do all the scientific, and I agree, I believe in basing it on science. But if the governor comes out with his recommendation and his is based on the science of what's happening and says within this time frame you can do this or this, then that would give us enough information to make a decision what we would do then at that point. Because he has all of the science and all the people working on the statistics and all this. And
So are you saying, is he supposed to speak in February, you said?
well,
Bonnie?
I don't know when he's going to speak. He's done it usually once a month or so.
His last list of mandates and guidelines is supposed to go through February 15th.
But he may come out before that.
He might.
Yeah. But he said that in his January address. And I'm sure he'll give another update soon. But I don't have time to do statistics and checking on all the positivity rates. I don't know who to believe, part of it. And
Yeah, and I don't think they've been routinely reporting positivity rates for Quad counties.
I don't think so either.
They're just reporting it for our Clark and Washoe.
Yeah.
Oh, well, because a couple of weeks ago when the Carson City Health Department spoke at a commissioners meeting, they were telling us our positivity rates. And at the time they were 22%. The state or the county gets flagged if they're anywhere above 8%.
Well, and the problem with the test positivity rate is that a lot of people don't get tested. I mean, I've never gotten tested because I've had no reason to think I was definitely exposed.
That's true.
And, that's true for a lot of people. You get tested if you think you were exposed or if you're not feeling good.
I don't know. I got tested twice just simply because I wanted to know. And I have my vaccine. I get the next one in a couple of weeks. So.
Well, Elizabeth, with your science background, what would you suggest as a benchmark?
Yeah, I'm wondering about a benchmark that has to do with the total current cases. Because that's more reliable in some ways, because that test positivity, as we said, depends on who shows up to get a test. Or we could set a benchmark that's related to vaccination or a combination of those. I mean, I think vaccination, maybe a combination is the best because vaccination rate is also very relevant. And I mean, maybe we want to have, we can open for limited browsing when 25% of our population has received at least the first dose. I mean, because that shows a good trend. We're at like 4% for the state right now. I just ran those numbers last night. That is behind the average for the country in terms of percent of our population that's been vaccinated. So
Maybe
it's kind of arbitrary in a lot of ways what we pick.
maybe we could consult with the individual who spoke at the commissioners meeting. Amy, you mentioned, gave data, and suggest a couple of these benchmarks and ask for a second opinion on what would make sense to explain what we're trying to accomplish. And I think cases sounds good to me, but I'm not Deborah Burks, you know what I mean? So I don't understand all the subtleties and what may be underlying capturing this data and so on.
Well, I will
maybe.
say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No. I will say, I agree with Elizabeth that the more reliable statistics are things like number of cases and number of vaccines. And I think reliable data is really, really important, obviously. So I think those are both good, or a combination of the two would be very workable, because it's something that we can track and watch. And then if for some reason there's another surge and we go above that benchmark, then we would know what kind of actions we need to take as well. So that could be sort of a more durable, I guess, way of determining. Well, because they're easy to track. We get those number of cases are updated every day. So we could
Could you possibly get, confer with the health official to see what is a sensible number? Is it 25%? I mean, or we shouldn't be in a position of just picking that ourselves.
Right.
We should at least confer with someone who's kind of in that business day in and day out.
Well, that's up to the board. Oh, Cynthia, are you raising your hand?
Yep.
You're muted.
I don't think I'm muted.
Oh,
Can you-
there you are.
I just wanted to make sure it was okay with the chair that I went ahead and spoke. So right now, the standard throughout the state is the 25%. The county, and that's through the directive, I think 35 was the one that set that. The county does currently, if it's a building that's accessible to the public, it maintains that 25% threshold, whether it's at the Menden Inn or the community center. The county does have a public health officer, Dr. Holman, who obviously would be available to talk to you about, if there's a reason to vary from that 25%. I know in the departments that when they were closed, from an HR perspective, if they were closed for any period of time, then the question becomes, is it appropriate for, furloughs and those type of things? So, I mean, there's two, considerations. I think from a policy perspective, the direction obviously is going to be based on your mission statement, and focusing on that, it's to provide comprehensive services. So that includes whether it's getting it online or getting it through the book drop or going into the library. So I think just for purposes of the conversation is, what's the overall policy that you would like to see followed? And then, Ms. Dotson can go from there and figure out the operational aspects of how to put that in place. So I just kind of wanted to provide a broader overall perspective, as well as mention that the county does have a public health officer who's involved with the Quad County on a daily basis and emergency operations, and that is Dr. Holman.
I'm sorry, what is it, Holman or Pullman?
Holman.
Pullman, like pull a cart?
No, Holman, like Holman.
Yeah, sorry. And I think-
Holman?
Uh-huh.
And
Okay, great.
he did speak at the county meeting along with Dr. Freeman. And so he's very specific to Douglas County, and he does work with Carson City as well as our emergency management on a routine basis. So he is a resource.
Okay. And then it's up to the board to decide, the timing and anything else that's related to it. I think that the community is hoping that we can make a decision today, but I'm just basing that on the complaints. So.
Is that a question for me, Amy?
No.
Or-
No,
Oh, okay.
statement.
I just think we need to do a little more research before we make that decision and make it based on science.
Okay.
I'm happy that Elizabeth's on the board because she can help us a lot with that.
Well, then Amy,
Well-
do you want to consult with Dr. Holman and get back to the board with the information he provides so we can make an informed decision?
Yes, unfortunately, we'd have to make a decision at a meeting. We can't do it by email or anything. So we would have to schedule a special meeting or whatever the board desires.
I would be open to scheduling a meeting in 2 weeks where you could report on, any guidance that Dr. Holman has for us, or, any colleagues he might then refer us on to, and all of us could have a chance to just take in, the discussion and debate that we've had this morning. And at that point, perhaps we could look at a decision tree where, one side says, wait, for set agreed upon benchmarks before opening for browsing. And the other leg of the tree says, we've got the go ahead from the governor. Let's do a staged browsing reopening. And so what are the trip points, and what are the, and what data would support that? So we kind of have a two-legged, decision tree. And then I think if we could have a document like that, that would help us see the science on both sides of the argument, and just be a little bit more focused. And in the meantime, we'll I think there's been different points of view, all of which I think have been beneficial to discuss. But I hate to see us kick the can down the road for 30 more days. I think we should have an answer. Any of us should be able to answer to the community if we choose to stay with our current policy. It's because X, Y, and Z, crisp answer, not just because we're being safe and cautious, and on the other hand, if we have plans to open, when, why, and how will that work, so
Right.
I think we need to be, I think it warrants, it's a big deal, right? Whether or not to let people in the library in person. So I think it warrants a special meeting just to discuss that. And I would say 2 weeks should be plenty of time to, do the research and plot this out. So I make a motion that we have such a meeting.
February 9th.
Yeah, that would be February 9th.
Let me look at I say all this and then I will, no, I never go anywhere. So I'm sure I'll be here. February 9th is perfect for me. So yeah.
Okay, and I'll make a second to that motion that we have a special meeting February 9th to get the information from the public health officer.
Well, I'll reschedule a dentist appointment, but that's okay with me.
I'm going to be doing it from my sister's house in Oceanside, but I can do it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for a special meeting February 9th. All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we'll have that meeting then. Agenda item number 11 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding Bookmobile budget, service hours of operation, and programs in response to COVID pandemic.
So last week, when we had a 2-on-1 with me and Chairperson Garahan and Vice Chairman Rogers, we talked about ways that we could provide programs through the Bookmobile, and we decided on exploring the idea. Well, not decided. We didn't decide anything. Sorry. That was for you, Cynthia. We didn't decide anything, but we talked about the idea of having like story time with the Bookmobile, where all the children were outside rather than enclosed somewhere like in the library, and using the Bookmobile to do that. And the thought was maybe to have the Bookmobile in front of the library and have the kids spread out at social distancing spaces and have a story time that way. So I've put that plan in motion. The only determining factor really is the weather. But Kiera Frederick, who's our children's librarian, is very excited about the idea, and our new bookmobile driver as well. So we have all of the elements except for the weather. And, you know, a couple of weeks ago would have been perfect because it was so nice outside. Now we're having a lot of snow. So we have to just kind of watch the weather, but that program is going to happen. And that's one way that we could use the bookmobile and do it right here at the library. As for regular operations of the bookmobile, there's nothing in the budget at the moment for operating the bookmobile. The major expense is the gasoline and the maintenance. It's on a 3-month maintenance schedule. So it was checked over about a month and a half ago, roughly. I can't remember the date, but it got its usual quarterly check. So it is operating just fine. But the main expense is the gasoline and maintenance. And let's hope we don't get anything really expensive like flat tires. But anyway, the fuel and the maintenance cost roughly $6,000 a year. 3,000 to 4,000 of that is gasoline. We have books and we have the vehicle and we have the people. So we just don't have the money for, you know, keeping it running. So if we were to say, use the bookmobile right here at the library, whether it's for story time or not, we would just have limited numbers of people that could be inside at a time, just like we were discussing about the building. And so we could just allow small numbers of children and parents on at a time. It would be a little bit slower than what we usually do, but it would work. And we can also open up windows and so on if it's not too cold to get that air circulation as well.
Amy, could you
And
take
is
the
it-
book? Could you take the bookmobile to the community center? I don't know, maybe and have for browsing, and you could have 1 or 2 people in it at a time.
Yeah, we could do that.
And that way they'd have access to, they'd see the bookmobile. I don't know how it's operated. I know what a little about what the community center is doing, but again, it's out there, and they could just say it's 1 person at a time and you leave. I go into some facilities and it's 1 at a time. You go in and you take care of what you're going to do and you leave, and the next person can go in.
We could definitely do something like that. Budget wise, we would just need to move money from one category to another in order to put a budget into the bookmobile line. As Terry mentioned, and as we've discussed, we don't know if we're getting additional revenue. We hope we are. But at the moment, it's a big fat 0 on the bookmobile line. So we would need to decide what funds we want to use in order to pay for the fuel and oil changes and so on.
Do you have a category you suggest moving it from?
Well, the only category that we could move it from is books, unfortunately, because that's all we have. All the budget lines were cut so severely that we don't even have what we need in some of those budget lines, like office supplies or, you know, what have you. Those budgets are already too small.
What about gift funds?
It could come out of the gift fund. Absolutely.
Take it. Because how much is in there?
84 or 74?
I think it's 74,000. Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, we could move money from the gift fund into the bookmobile line as well.
Well, I think that would be a good use of the money, saying that if we're making this available to the community, through the use of those funds. That's just an idea.
Yeah, that would work.
Well, I'll make a motion then to move the $6,000 from the gift fund into the bookmobile fund.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move 6,000 from the gift fund into the bookmobile operations fund. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and then you'll just let us know, Amy, when weather permits that it will be happening.
Right. It won't be
Thank
this
you.
week, but yes.
No.
Yes. We'll get a schedule going and get ready to get on the road.
Thank you.
Yes. thank you.
Okay, item number 12 for possible action, discussion and possible action to revise the library board bylaws.
Before we do this could be a lengthy discussion. And I want us to be prepared. So I'm thinking about asking that we table this for the next meeting and put it number 1 on the agenda. I haven't made an motion yet, so I'm just thinking about it. Because I think for Elizabeth and for Heather to have, I know Heather's had it for a couple of months, I guess, but time to go through and do the comparisons and for us to come back and have a thorough discussion, because this is a very important piece of business for the board. And we're already now at 12:36. So so I'm going to make a motion that we table this to the February meeting and if they put item number 1 on the agenda.
I second it.
Thank you, Jess.
Can I have a motion and a second to table the bylaws till the February meeting? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one carried. Agenda item number 13 for possible action, discussion and possible action on the library's long-range plan. Discussion topics may include consultation options, timeline of creating the long-range plan, and or the board members' expectations.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Chairperson Rogers, who's now Chairperson Rogers, and Chairperson Garahan asked me to reach out to UNR, School of Business, about their services for helping with long-range plans. And that's because they had also done the strategic plan for the Carson City Library. And so I did get in touch with him, but I didn't get an answer until after we had already posted everything. So I'll just summarize what he said in an email. He has done the strategic plan for Carson City Library and Lyon County Library, it turns out. And he also does the annual updates. This is, Professor Fred Steinman of the College of Business. And he said, yes, he does do these strategic planning services. He said that's almost exclusively what he does, actually. So that's good. He'd be happy to work with us. And so he's definitely in favor of it. As for price, he said it varies, but he thinks that their prices are competitive compared to other consultants. For Lyon County, it was $2,600. And for Carson City, it was $12,000. So it's, yeah, huge spectrum there. Yeah.
They're different libraries.
Yeah, different libraries. But anyway, that's what the cost was. The one I think that was the most recent was Lyon County, but I'm not positive. Anyway, and so he said it does vary. He said the additional cost for Carson City was so high because they did community surveys and stuff, and they asked him to do that. That's something we could obviously do on our own. But anyway, so he does do that. He's also available to do presentations of the final plan, either to the board or to the commissioners or whoever, if we wanted him to do that. And he said he would be happy to talk with me further about it if we wanted to pursue that. The other options are using the state libraries consultants to do strategic planning, and they will do any or all of it for us at no cost. So it's free, which is nice. And then the third option being hiring some other consultant, which I know is not necessarily a popular idea, but it's out there. So we have at least 3 options there with our strategic planning. And I know it's a big priority for the board, so I'm glad that we're going to have it on the agenda every month. The budget looks now, I'm in favor of using the state library. Because of the cost, obviously, the only cost we would incur then would be marketing, doing community surveys. So things like basically office supplies just to get the word out there, and set up, you know, community surveys or focus groups or whatever we want to do. So our costs would be very low if we use the state library.
Do you know why Carson didn't use the state library?
I have no idea. It was a different director then, and so I really don't know. It was, I think, 3 years ago, maybe. So no, I have no idea. But I know lots of libraries do use their state libraries, and not just here, but in other states and other libraries where I've worked as well. Because they have experts, they've done it several times, they know the community, they know Nevada, they're all librarians, of course, and you know, it's a good idea. I'm in favor of it. But Dr. Steinman does offer some great services that might take the workload off of us, but it's going to come at a price of some sort, hopefully less than 12,000. So anyway, that's what's out there.
Well, I would be in favor of working with the state library on it myself rather than spending money to do it. And I know, Bonnie, you can speak to the last time the long range plan was done, that they did get a consultant.
Well, we did get a consultant, and for that time we paid 50,000. And for the new ones here, and even for Jill, it clearly was a waste of money, because the woman who did it was supposedly an expert out of Las Vegas, and what she sent us back wasn't even our library. It was just garbage. I don't even, and we couldn't get the money back. So the board literally took but they had done the pre-work for the community and things, which the board had. And that's a lot of work for your strategic plan, getting your input from your community, and also what changes you see. And that's a very difficult thing for the board itself to do. So I would go along with using the state library to do that type of work. And then what they bring back to us, the board analyzing and coming up with its strategic plan for the next 10 years. That way you control what's happening. I know a lot of times consultants want it to look like something else, but it has to be what our library looks like. And so we can use county demographics, and they can help us determine what the strengths and weakness and opportunities are. But I don't want to spend a lot of money ever again.
And so how do you go about that, Amy? You just contact the state library and
Yes.
tell them that we want them to do it?
Right. And then, of course, we would have to talk about scheduling, but I have already talked to them preliminarily, just to find out if they're available and would they be willing to do it and so on. And they're happy to do it. So we would just have to work out a timeline. And in the agenda item, it says timeline. I think at this point, it might be too soon to set anything specific without talking to them first. But I think if we make a goal of, finishing within 1 year or a year and a half, or however long you all would like to do, we could do that, or we could decide to do that later on. But yes, all I would have to do is call them and give them the green light, and then we would just work out scheduling, how we're going to do it with them.
Amy, I would like to suggest, if you do that they come to a board meeting and set out then a plan for what they're going to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely.
Okay, and then we could sit on with that using, make a timeline.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, so Cynthia, would we need a motion to have Amy contact them to come to one of our meetings, or can she just set that up?
I think with regards to the item, the action you're taking is you're making a motion to have the library director reach out to the state for a strategic plan and to set the process for that. And then obviously Ms. Dotson can go forward and work that out and then bring it back to you. So I think it's more of setting up directing her to contact them. That's who you've decided to go with, contacting them and setting up a process and timeline. And then she can bring back that information to you. I don't think you have to direct her to say, yes, come to this meeting or anything like that at this point in time. I think you're at the beginning stages where you're reaching out and getting that basic information and timeframes.
Okay, thank you.
I think choosing which type of consultant we want to use is a huge step. And I agree with everything Cynthia just said. So I think making a motion to decide on the state library and for me to move forward with contacting them and setting up a schedule and inviting them to meetings. They may say they're not available till March. You know, they might not be available for the February meeting, and that's okay. So yeah, I would make the motion the way Cynthia just sort of summarized for us.
So
Yeah,
can
well,
I
she-
just say Cynthia's motion? Okay, then I will make a motion directing Amy to reach out to the Nevada State Library to have them work on our strategic plan to set up when they can attend our meetings.
I second it.
That was Jill.
Mhm.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to have Amy reach out to the Nevada State Library. All those in favor? Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, that one's done.
Okay.
Agenda item number 14 for possible action, discussion and possible action on scheduling twice monthly non-quorum meetings with the library director and members of the board.
Yes. So this was something that was suggested or actually I should say put as a goal in December. I've had one of those meetings with Kate and Bonnie. I think at the last meeting when we discussed this, it was determined that those meetings would consist of the chair and then a rotating member of the board, so that every board member got a chance to sit in on these meetings one at a time. Is that correct to everyone's memory?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had asked if we wanted to schedule them a certain way. And so that's why it's an agenda item. It's just a scheduling thing. If we want to do it on particular days or just say twice a month, or do we want one before the board meeting and then after the board meeting? Whatever you all have in mind is fine.
Well, what day of the week works best for you, Amy?
Oh, thank you for asking. Thursdays are good and Mondays are good. Tuesdays seem to be when I have all kinds of meetings for some reason. So Mondays and Thursdays are best.
Is it?
Any
Best to
trustees
put-
have preference?
I am not available on any Mondays unless it's a holiday.
Are you
I teach
available
from-
Thursdays?
I teach from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. on Mondays.
Whoa.
Are you available Thursdays then?
I'm available in the morning on a Thursday only, not in the afternoon.
Well, I think we should decide the frequency, but Thursdays are great. Do we want to have it just every other Thursday or, you know, the first and third Thursday? Whatever
I
you want.
thought it was just once a month in addition
once
to
a
our board meeting.
Oh, I thought it was twice a month.
No,
No, so I would say
Oh.
the second week, the second Thursday of the month,
Oh,
that's a
that'd be
good,
good.
because our meetings are the fourth Tuesday.
That sounds good.
10 a.m.?
Anything's fine. Whatever works for whoever's coming is fine by me.
so the second Thursday, and that would be like a week or 2 weeks before we have the board agenda.
Yes.
That's,
So that could help me with setting the agenda and also discussing whatever you want to discuss.
because that would put it the week before the agendas due, correct, Amy?
Yes. That would be good.
Is that, that's enough time?
Yes, it is. Actually, it's perfect timing.
Okay.
Sorry, I was an overachiever and wanted 2 meetings. Sorry about that.
I'm just too busy, too busy. I have, I'm getting out too many places.
So then,
Uh,
second Thursday at 10 is great. I don't think we need to set up a rotation schedule, but next time it would be Chairperson Rogers and then one other board member.
Well, I'd like to have Heather
Oh, do
I
you?
think that's good. Yeah.
Okay,
join me on that. Heather, is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
okay,
think
so
it's
that
very
next
important.
one, sorry.
I just think it's important for the vice chair to know what's happening too. So
Sure. So that would be February 11th. So 2 days after our special meeting. But yeah, February 11th is the second Thursday of the month.
Wait, I'm on the wrong month here. Okay, gotcha. All right.
So February 11th is okay?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay,
and we do those in person at
yes,
the library.
at the library.
Oh, we do it at the library. Okay.
Yeah.
Unless you don't want to.
Oh, no,
I'm
that's
flexible.
that's fine. February 11th, and that would be at 10 o'clock?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
And then will Bonnie be the one that just randomly each month asks someone to go to that meeting with her?
Mm-hmm.
Just let Bonnie know that's her responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah, is that okay with you, Bonnie?
That's okay with me. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, then if there's no more discussion on that, we'll move on to agenda item number 15 for discussion only. Library Director's monthly report on library operations and statistical reports from staff.
Okay. We'll make this brief because we have a demo at 1 o'clock, so we all have to be there. But anyway, first I want to ask if everybody's been receiving my weekly reports. Okay, good.
Yes.
And any questions or comments on those? Anything you want to see different or anything like that? No? Okay. So I'll be sending those out on Mondays unless there's a holiday and then the next work day after the holiday. Okay, so the monthly report is really just a summary of all the weekly reports. I can't invent things to fill up the monthly report, so I just kind of summarize the big topics from the last weekly reports. So as I said earlier, curbside is going really, really well. In 1 month, we did almost 1,400 curbside transactions, which is incredible. And the patrons really love it. I know a couple people have said it's not the same, and it's not, but I think it's a really nice substitute. And enough about that for today. The annual budget process starts on Monday, February 1st. So that's when we will get our deadlines and instructions and mandates and so on. It's called the budget kickoff, but kickoff makes it sound way too exciting. It's not. But every year we have a kickoff, and so this year it's on February 1st. I've been holding staff meetings every month throughout our closure, in person and online, or a hybrid of both. And so we have those staff meetings generally on the second Tuesday of the month, but sometimes we do change them. And normally we just discuss normal staff meeting things. But we've added, of course, a whole COVID portion of those meetings to talk about procedures and sanitation and things like that. We have our new senior library tech who replaced Heather Frew. His name is Scott Spangler. He's doing great. He's only been here a couple of weeks. And then Maria is retiring as of Saturday. That's her last day. And we will miss her. She's been here a long time. And the community knows her really well as well. So I think the community is going to really notice once we reopen. And then we've begun recruiting for Maria's position. It was just posted on Friday. So hopefully we'll be doing those interviews in early February. And then last but not least, the next round of the county management training program is starting in February. And I have enrolled Laura and Julia both, and I will be taking the makeup classes that I need to take. So I hope to have those finished soon. And that's about it. I will let Julia talk about statistics.
All right, the statistical report for the current fiscal year, as well as the 1920 numbers for comparison, were in the packet. A few things to point out: library visits are very small, and that is due to the library was open for a few days for browsing in December. The last day for browsing was Saturday, December 5th. Like Amy mentioned, curbside numbers are growing rapidly. This month, so far in January, we are going to blow the December numbers out of the water. We currently are doing about 60 curbside pickups a day in Minden. Another number that we have been looking at a lot is the downloadables, or our e-checkouts is what it is called on the statistical report. That's very consistent over last month. And then database sessions did go down a little bit. It went down about 1,000 uses. I'm not really sure why or what the reason is for that, but our most used databases in the month of December were Novelist, which is our reader's advisory database, as well as Heritage Quest, which is the genealogy database. And then in addition to the statistical report, there is an additional report on there. Get that pulled up here. It's the circulation numbers that you guys had asked for previously. It's circulation by collection. The first on the left side of the document is circulation for physical items, and then on the right side is Hoopla and Overdrive, which are our two largest downloadable options.
And I love that report, Laura. I think, or sorry, Julia, I think it had great information in it. And one thing I'd like to see us do is maybe work with teachers at the junior high and high school, because every single child has a device, and the Libby app is great to use on either your iPhone or iPad. I'd love to see the teachers give an assignment of read a book on your device and you know, get some class credit for it, but introduce them to it so that they can get more usage in that age group.
Definitely, yes. And that is something we're working on right now, is adding more juvenile and young adult items into our Overdrive Libby collection as well, so we can see that. We're hoping that that will increase our numbers in that category.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, nobody has anything else. We'll go ahead and take closing public comment at this time. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and control of the Library Board of Trustees. Any written public comment received after 4 p.m. the day before the Library Board meeting will be compiled and added as supplemental materials to the county's website and distributed to the Library Board of Trustees within 24 hours after the meeting. To make public comment during the meeting, the public must call 775-783-6024 and leave a voice message, which will be played for the Library Board of Trustees and the public. Okay, at this time, 12:58, public comments open. You're muted, Veronica.
Muted.
This is Veronica Hellum. I have 3 voicemails. Let's see, I'll go ahead and play the first one that was received at 11:29.
Hello, this is Sarah Jacobson, S-A-R-A-J-A-C-O-B-S-E-N. My public comments, in addition to the written public comments that I had made previously, is particular to the amount of talk that has happened thus far in today's Board of Trustees meeting. Is I keep repeatedly hearing the phrase and concern over wanting and needing increased patronage and usage, in particular when you were discussing the agenda item pertaining to book lockers. I find it frustrating that the board is willing to spend and usage of library materials when the library is still closed, and that the issue of decreased patronage and usage of the library due to the closure has not been addressed. I appreciate that Ms. Dodson did say that it is difficult to determine demand currently because of curbside service being essentially the only service that is available. Pointing out that yes, curbside service is an issue to determine the need of our community. And I believe that the board needs to truly look at increasing patronage and usage of the library by opening the library and allowing full patronage and usage as we should be able to use as library card holders in Douglas County.
Okay, I know those voicemails are difficult to hear, so I'll make sure I transcribe those and provide them to the trustees.
Thank you.
Okay, the next voicemail was received at 12:20.
I apologize. I have to go because I have a class to teach.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Welcome.
okay, let me play that one again. Okay, so there's nothing there. The caller did call again, and that's the third message. Okay, and this one was received at 12:23.
Hello, this is Linda Miller, LINDAMILLER. I am streaming the library board meeting this morning. Item number 10. The governor says the library can be open at 25%. I don't agree with Amy Dodson's comments that she wants to delay. Overwhelmingly, the board members are in favor of opening the library. It doesn't have to be at 25%. It can be less. I believe they're right that it's important to do what the public's asking. Amy Dodson doesn't seem to be interested in pleasing people that visit the library. So on item number 10, please open the library. She has plenty of time. She has the money to open the library, say in 2 weeks. Post it in the local newspaper. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, that was the last public comment received.
And I believe I opened it at 12:58, correct? Does anybody remember?
You did. It was
Okay.
12:58.
Yes.
Okay, so we've had the 5 minutes of public comment. There being none other, we'll close public comment. And then we'll adjourn this meeting at 1:04.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.